This is a more tailored fall layer look, a little more chic. This is our college professor or our country gentleman. So he has fall fabrics on. This is going to be a houndstooth wool trouser. So I'm creating good strong shadows with my marker. You can see, even though it's a nice outfit, it would be an expensive outfit, I'm still keeping the cut young and hip. The crotch is a little lower. They come down over his shoes. He's got the drooping suspenders. All this helps to make it feel like a more fun outfit. Now, in order to do houndstooth, I need to have stripes laid in so that I can then place the pattern. So I use my black Prisma to lay in the stripes, and then I can start doing the houndstooth. And those are basically .45-degree angles. They don't have to be incredibly precise, but I have to keep the angles pretty consistent. That's one way that the stripes help. Now, if I don't have a lot of time to render, or just to keep a looser look, I can just lay in my pattern in the lighter areas and let the shadow blend. I don't have to lay in my pattern in every single area. You can see this doesn't have to take a long, long time. Once you get a rhythm of laying in the pattern, you can do it pretty quickly. And the Prisma pencil line helps to add texture. Now I wanted to create a slight feeling of a tweed, so I'm using my Tombow to go in and add spots of texture. I can also use that to pull out my details. The nail fly, of course, is on the left. You have to be careful. If you flip your figure, you can have it backwards. And from this angle, I will see an inseam. Now I want a little more texture, so the white gouache is perfect for that. Usually tweed will have dark and light touches. Because my pattern is so dark, I need the lighter gouache to really pop it. But I have to keep it very delicate or it'll start looking like he's been caught in a snowstorm. My suspender will cast a shadow, as will my jacket. And I need my shadow to follow the folds. Pulling toward the knee. Now my jacket, I want to have a slightly greenish tone. You can see this rendering is about, again, subtle neutrals, but I don't want garments that just match. I want them to have subtle contrast. I can add a binding around the collar that looks like leather. That makes the jacket expensive. It's going to be in a warmer brown tone. And then I'm going to make that precise with my Tombow. Add stitching around my pocket. And a good strong little shadow and a little binding. And it's fun to add a leather patch to a jacket like this. It's a very classic detail. A plaid hat is fun. It keeps it a little bit younger. And in this case, I'm adding a pinstripe to the jacket that will make an interesting contrast to the herringbone. I think younger guys are often more willing to combine patterns. And I use my black Prisma because that'll create a soft feeling of texture. Scarves are very much an important part of fall outfits for men and women. But you need to look at a good photo of someone wearing a scarf or have someone in front of you. It's not easy until you get used to it to make up that scarf. And I want my scarf to feel like an interesting pattern to contrast with the other patterns. You can see the fact that all the colors are extremely subtle and relate to each other. Even though we have a lot of pattern, it works well together. I've got an argyle sweater, which I'd like to have a little accent of color. You can see he's got a shirt, a sweater, and a jacket, so he's got a lot of layers on. And I'm going to use a deep purple to add some contrast. This is a nice cool color to balance all the warm. This is back to a warm color, kind of a deep orange, and then some of my warm gray. So again, I'm using different kinds of colors to integrate and accent at the same time. And create the pattern of the argyle. Because this is all quite dense, rich fabric, I'm going to pretty much fill it in. I'm not leaving much in the way of highlights. Your fall fabrics will have fewer highlights. And of course, a good shadow is cast by these thicker fabrics. I want to be shy with my shadow. Just remember to clarify for yourself where your light source is coming so you can lay in the shadows with some kind of method. You can see my scarf looks very textured, but not too busy. I need to accentuate my rib. Again, I can use a little tan Prisma pencil to create that patina. It makes it feel like a rich, expensive fabric. And now my gouache to just pull out some highlights to get the edge of my sweater. Again, keeping in mind that I can soften this white once it dries by going over it with a warmer marker. Again, my Tombow is helpful for pulling out details. The black Prisma keeps it soft. Creating a strong holding line. It has to be the strongest line. Sometimes when you're doing a rendering like this, you might even want to put it up on the wall and get away from it for a little bit so you see what needs to be done. It's easy to get carried away with rendering. Same principle to the boots. Top plane, side plane. Because these are very simple boots, they take just a minute to render. So we're using shadow to push the back boot back into space. You can see this is a very bulky coat. Again, I'm adding a little green to it so it coordinates with the jacket. This is a corduroy coat, so I've already drawn in some loose, very wiggly lines, which helps to create the sense of corduroy. You can see how they're a little different than my pinstripes. Prisma will help soften up the look, pull out the corduroy texture. My micro pen. Popping out some of those corduroy textures, particularly in the shadows. It's important that this coat feel more dense than anything else in the illustration. It should feel heavy and warm and cozy. Then you can see a red prisma is adding a little warmth and texture. It's not actually red, it's more of a red-brown. I stick to mostly neutrals. And the white prisma picks up the edges. I can start adding texture to my fur. This would probably be a real fur, so it would feel more luxurious. Remembering the fur goes in one direction, so I'm bringing my line so it fur looks like it's wrapping around the shoulder. Of course, it's going to be darkest closest to the interior, so I throw some shadow in the inside underneath the collar. And then a little bit of highlight as well. That helps separate the collar from the coat. See, to get the density of that fur, it sometimes takes a few layers. Popping out my edges. Again, the nice strong shadows. You can see how rich that makes the fabric look.